We talked yesterday about.
Are we going to talk about Hannukah tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
We also talk about this one.
A different class, yeah. There's other than the primary origin of the law of not uprooting a tree, not to destroy a tree, if there's no good reason. Right? The language of the text is lo tashchit et eitzah. In addition, there was.
Wait, why does it say eitzah?
Because that's what you call a tree.
Eitz shalah. It's a compound word, and
So would that mean my tree? Eitzah, your tree.
eitz shalah, her tree, her tree. In the case of we're talking about the city that you're laying siege to. It's her city. The city's feminine. In Israel, all cities are feminine. It's good to know.
And ships and countries.
Okay, cool. All right, you're studying something in Opan. So we said destruction, and we talked about the halachic parameters of specifically fruit trees. Now, any tree you're really not supposed to destroy either, or anything.
But
But
it's supposed to waste things.
Exactly.
Utilizing it as a waste.
That's correct. That's correct. But before we get into that, that's what we're going to talk about today: the rules of waste in general. There's one more thing that we should say is that the Talmud relates the story of Rabbi Hanina, who says that he chopped down a fig tree, and maybe a little too early. It was dying or something. It eventually was about to be ready for chopping down, but he felt that maybe he got punished because he was not careful enough about that mitzvah. And he says, my son died. My son died early. So Rabbi Hanina. So the Kabbalists took this and said, whoa, be careful about chopping down trees. Be very, very careful about it because there's this horrible curse associated with it. And also, in there's a book called Sefer Hasidim, and there's a will there, a living will of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, which was a leader of a pious sect in Germany in the 13th century, I believe, thereabouts. And there he also says that if you cut down trees, it could be dangerous for you. There's a little bit of a danger there. So because of that, we try to be very careful about cutting down fruit trees. And if you do have to, for whatever reason, we try to do it through a non-Jew, as we mentioned yesterday. And that might be forbidden midivrei chachamim, but if there's a need, there's much more reason to be lenient.
So it's asur to cut down a fruit-bearing tree.
Correct. Okay, so that's just sort of as an added reason why we're very careful about that prohibition. And unless there's a very good reason, like we spoke about yesterday, halachically may be allowed, but there's reason to be even a little more careful about that, based on the mystical side of our tradition. We continue to other things now, other elements.
Question
Question
on
about the
that.
trees, yeah.
You just said if you have to get a non-Jew to cut down the tree.
Yeah.
Does that mean you can pay a non-Jew to cut down the tree?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
you personally cutting
You
down.
personally is going to be worse than.
So I have a question, sir.
Yeah,
If the tree is dead, is there any sort of...
no problem.
Also, it's mutar only if it's dead.
Correct. Well, we discussed more details of that yesterday, but you can watch the video of yesterday's class. It's on YouTube. There's if it bears less fruit, right, below the minimum level of fruit, that's also you don't have to wait till it's actually totally dead. Just to answer your question a little more fully. Okay, and then of course, if it's causing damage and everything we said yesterday, the reasons why that you're allowed to, if you have a greater constructive purpose, it's not considered to be destructive. Now, destroying, ultimately, as I said, the original context is fruit trees in a siege. But what about destroying other things? So, according to many poskim, it's actually forbidden from the Torah just to destroy things for no good reason.
So.
Actually, from the Torah, even though it's not a fruit tree.
If you have like a shirt
Yeah.
with long sleeves, and I myself don't do this, but I know several people who do. They've got a nervous habit where they'll like start picking at the shirt until it starts to unravel. Would that fall into that category?
Yes. If there's a constructive purpose for unraveling the shirt, like you want to have a sleeveless shirt, and so you're making the shirt wearable, so then that's nothing destructive about it. That overrides. But if there's no good reason, now it's very interesting. You talk about a shirt.
They'll start picking at it until it starts to come undone. Or some people who bite their sleeves, bite holes in them.
Yeah, there's all sorts of strange customs, but. So, in general, that's interesting you bring that example about tearing a shirt, because there are two mitzvot, 2 times where we have to tear a shirt.
When someone dies, it's very close relatives.
Correct?
And when you see the Beit HaMikdash destroyed.
Yafe. And the extension of that is when you see Jerusalem destroyed, and the extension of that is when you see a city of Judea destroyed. Correct. So those, obviously, the mitzvah to commemorate and to mark the Avilut, the mourning, overrides this principle, because you're doing it for the sake of a mitzvah. So it's not destructive; it's actually for the sake of a mitzvah. But if there's no constructive reason, it's forbidden. And the truth is, people who are not going to like it, but I'm going to say it. I think this basically I said it already before. It extends to destroying our environment, polluting our world, pollution.
No, we're doing it for a mitzvah, it's fine.
If you're doing it for a mitzvah, but if you can do it without destroying, then that's better.
Well, I mean, when Israel delivers an airstrike in Gaza, that's quite clearly destruction.
You're doing a mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah to destroy our enemies, to beat down our enemies.
So it's also a mitzvah.
Right.
It's
It's
a
also
mitzvah
a
when
mitzvah to go buy
If you can
fire.
create the energy without polluting the rivers and the oceans, it's much better.
Is it mitzvah to tear down the rainforest for a nice to see?
Yes.
Amen. Okay. So what's a need? So we said, what's another classic example you guys all know of when we take a dish and we smash it?
For the,
That's right, under the chuppah. A dish. It's just any kind of vessel, any kind of utensil. You're not supposed to destroy anything that's has a good purpose. Why is it allowed? Because it's for the purpose of commemorating the destruction of the temple. So that's allowed. But those are the exceptions. But it shows you that if there's a good reason. Now there is a story in the Talmud. One second, Rena, one second. There's a story in the Talmud that the rabbi thought was at a wedding. And this is actually, some people say, the origin of the custom to break a glass under the chuppah, was that the people at the wedding were getting a little rowdy.
Oh, yeah, I also heard
Maybe even getting more than rowdy. Maybe they were even flirting. Maybe they were doing things which were untoward. And so he took a very expensive dish. But it sounds like he took an expensive dish and he smashed it. And then everybody was shocked. And that brought them back to their senses, it sort of shocked them to calm down, sobered them up a little bit. Exactly. So from here we see that
that's why we use a cup, because it was an expensive cup that someone used.
maybe it was
And
some
like,
kind of
you should
chalice, right?
Right, you should have the same reaction to right now because of the way to make dash.
Right.
And so some people use iPods nowadays because that's what is more effective than just a regular cup.
Oh, the iPods might be something else.
Someone used an iPod, I heard, because people were like, "Why
Well,
would
there's a
you
war.
do that?"
There's
That
a
makes
war.
sense.
There's a war against use of internet. In many societies. First of all, the internet is a very dangerous thing, and people having the smartphones. In many communities, they're fighting against that. And I remember in the day, maybe you guys don't remember this, but there was a fight against TVs. You shouldn't have a TV in your home. And so, it became like a public event. Let's smash TV, and to show people that we're not going to bring a TV into our homes. And part of the tshuva process is taking the TV that you had and throwing it out, and so you make a public TV smashing. All those kind of things, these are for educational purposes, but
So that's waste.
My friends
If
went
it's for
there.
the- if they consider it to be pikuach nefesh, really. There are families there's
My
families whose lives are destroyed
Yeah, my
by
friend's
these
mom,
tiny little
the,
things.
The kids were fighting and she took the PlayStation outside, threw it down,
Then that means a
Wow,
destroyed.
wow. So the truth is, there's some commentaries which say he actually took a broken vessel. The rabbi at the wedding, it was a utensil that couldn't be used anyways. He wasn't actually taking something that was viable, but rather, to them, it seemed, they thought it was taking something broken. So it's it's better not to destroy things. But if there's an educational value that you feel is important, there is the precedent in that story in the Talmud. Now the question is a big question. You guys may have heard of these. It's called a rage room. You know what I'm talking about? Never heard of it?
We had
You go in there,
we had a similar thing at
Sounds
our university
amazing.
where they got a car and just let people get like hammers and just like unleash all their
So apparently it's
frustration
a
on
thing. The one exists in Israel. I heard that a couple of years ago, one opened up in Israel. What it is a room where you pay to go in, and they give you protective gear. You put on a helmet and you put on like a whole suit and glasses of protective glasses, and you get to destroy things.
Why
Like
not just
you
make a gun?
you would have to pay extra for that, but it doesn't have the same satisfaction. They give you a metal rod, or they give you a baseball bat, or whatever. You get to choose your weapon of choice, and they give you like a TV or a screen or a machine of some sort. And basically, for half an hour, you like whack and destroy stuff. And the question is that kosher? Can you do that halachically? So everything we've learned basically says might be an Isser Doraisa, might be forbidden from the Torah, but there's other levels to discuss. So the theory is, why do people do this? The theory is that gets out your anger, and then you won't be angry afterwards. There's no studies which actually corroborate that idea. Could be it actually the opposite. Could be that actually trains you to let loose, and you're really supposed to control your anger and not just give it vent. Because if you give it vent here, then maybe when you get home and you get angry at your kid or your wife, chas v'chalila, you would take it out on them. Unfortunately, it happens too often. So, other than, it might be an Isser Doraisa, it might be an Isser D'Rabbanan, because obviously you take something that's broken already, you take something that's not, a broken typewriter, a broken computer, whatever it is, a broken TV, and you get the same satisfaction of smashing it. But, so it might be only an Isser D'Rabbanan, but it's definitely not good training. It's not good training to train yourself to just vent and practice being violent and letting out your anger. Anger is one of the worst midot that you can have, and we should be sublimating it. Or if the Talmud says whoever gets angry is as if he worshipped idol worship. So you don't want to just worship idols. You pay to worship idols for a little bit. Get out your anger. That doesn't sound like a smart thing to me.
So what about destructiveness for a positive purpose, though? We used to do as a fundraiser. We would get a car that was basically on its way to the junkyard.
Yeah.
And we would have an evening's entertainment, and you could bid on getting to smash the windshield, getting to take a crowbar to the door.
Yeah.
There were different levels of things.
It's problematic.
And it didn't damage the recycling value of the car whatsoever. At that point, it was going to get recycled, and all the steel was there, all the glass was there, and it was a fundraiser.
I hear you. It sounds like a good.
It's a college town, so.
It's a mitzvah to raise funds for good projects, but the method seems to be a little bit anti-educational or counter-educational to this concept of controlling your anger. And of course, there's this problem of destroying things. Destroying things is forbidden by the Torah. You're right. There's a constructive purpose, so maybe it might not be an Isser Torah. And of course, it's not a fruit tree, so maybe it's not an Isser Torah. According to some Rishonim, anything other than fruit trees is only D'Rabbanan. So there might be room, but I think you put those three levels of prohibition, it's probably better to find a better fundraiser.
Well, it's many years ago.
Play poker or something. I don't know. You wanted to say something, Ruben? Yeah, to comment?
Well, I mean, it reminds me of a verse in Mishlei, where I forget what kind of person it is, but his mind tends toward destruction. I think it's the Rasha. His mind always tends toward destruction.
That's right. That's right. We try to be constructive in the world, and that's what God wants of us, to develop the world, not to destroy it, and to protect it, and to make sure that we don't waste any of it. And the question therefore becomes, one second, Hirsch, the question becomes that, how can I go buy new clothes? If the old ones are still good. If the old ones are torn or ripped, fine, I understand. But just because I want to feel better, I want to look better. So the answer is we don't go crazy with that. And as long as there's a positive purpose, you're going to enjoy wearing new clothes better than the old clothes.
Something that's been put together in a concentration camp in China.
That's why you don't buy stuff made in China. It's the Chinese are evil.
Everything is made in China.
But of course, there's a limit to what you should invest in. The best is also if you do need to change your wardrobe and you want to, you don't have to wait until they're threadbare. You don't have to whatsoever. As long as you want to upgrade. But by all means, the leftovers, don't destroy them. The leftovers you should give to poor people. There's something called the Gemach. There's, what is it called in America? The Salvation Army? Goodwill, all those kind of things, where you're left, what's for you, junk, could be for somebody else, a treasure.
But once we do that, if it's not taken, there's a certain point that we can assume nobody would take it. So like if I
Yeah,
put
it's
up,
not gonna be
like
used by
in my
anybody.
neighborhood, I put up stuff for Hefker all the time, but I've noticed clothing people don't take because they don't, how do they know whether they're shot innocent? I think they're worried about it.
I don't think.
They don't, I don't know, but for whatever reason, they don't.
Probably you
take
live in
it.
a rich neighborhood, but there are
But
organizations which
if I
will
do that,
accept
if I
it.
do that, am I still chayav to take it further, or the fact that nobody locally takes it? Have I now discharged the obligation? Can I throw away what's left?
None of it is an obligation. If you're not going to use it anymore, you can throw it. It was just a nice additional enhancement to better than throw it out. You give it to someone but you don't have to go to crazy lengths to give it to someone else. It's up to you how much you want to invest in it. Nowadays, you can. There's websites. You can websites that you can give away things for free, and people who need them, you advertise, take a picture of it, you put it up there, and people will come and pick it up, and it's pretty easy. And like I said, there's in Israel, there's institutions that collect old clothing and give it to people that are in need. You don't have to invest more effort than it's going to end up costing you, and you don't have to. It's not an actual obligation. It's just an enhancement.
For educational purposes is permitted.
What do you mean?
Destruction for educational purposes because it's positive, not negative.
Correct. Yes, you wanted to say something, Shul? Sorry, you were almost speaking at the same time, yeah.
They apply the concept of food as well.
Exactly, I'm getting to food in just a minute. We have some more details about food. Yeah.
So you
Okay,
saw
sure.
from the conversation regarding these rage rooms or these rage objects, is it a sword to randomly break objects, and is it a more?
Correct.
It's a sword.
If most people buy new clothes, whatever, every year or 2 years, and you say, no, I'm going to wait until it's threadbare, until my clothes are threadbare and they have holes in it, I don't need to get new shoes. So then you're being, no, it's not good. It's the opposite extreme. It's the opposite extreme. It's not ideal. Great, so you're being miserly, you're being not respectful of yourself and of society. So basically, you have to keep the norms of society, but everything beyond that is considered wasteful. And everything that's beneath that is not behaving properly with dignity in society.
Would it be
Okay, let's get to food.
On the Jewish society or the non-Jewish society?
The halakha only applies to Jews.
Yeah, but when we look at how it's.
Depends where you live. Depends where you live. Nowadays, we pretty much live together. So it's a global village, right?
Well,
So,
there's
influences on each other.
If I'm in Flatbush,
Yeah.
and I have 20 people for Shabbos, and I use disposable things and whatever, the other Jews in the community will understand you didn't have 20 plates, it would have been a huge deal, and it's not considered wasteful. But other Americans might look at it and say, oh, how could you have wasted the, you see what I'm saying?
Right, I do.
Or even in Israel, there's,
So Aaron came to my class before, my Gemara class, a little bit, yes. Yes, welcome, Aaron. So, you're right, I think that we do have to make certain allowances for communities. That's why I don't think that this heavy tax that was imposed instantaneously in one from today till tomorrow was so fair. And there are some communities where it's much more common to use disposables because of the social structures. But in any case, without getting into details, the principles I think are clear. Let's go on to food, okay? Let's go on to food. Food, you're not supposed to waste food.
Wasting food is a food.
That's right, that's right. And the halacha pays particular attention. It's like, food is part of the divine bounty. God gave us the world to enjoy, and if you waste it, and if you treat it with disrespect, then the sages learn out that you bring poverty upon yourself.
Questions.
That there's an angel of filth, which brings poverty. As opposed to that, the angel of good livelihood is called cleanliness. So it's a fascinating midrash, basically telling you you should be careful to treat food with respect. Don't waste it. Don't throw it on the ground. Don't treat it with disrespect by throwing it. And so in a place where it's considered to be disrespectful to throw food, sometimes what's a good time when it could be acceptable to throw food?
Shabbos. Shabbos.
What?
If you said the bracha over Chabotzi,
Some people throw
to
out.
minimize the time so they get it as fast as
Right,
possible.
right.
And I follow that one personally
Okay,
because I
fine.
like how unchristian it is, having grown up in
I
a
see,
society
I
of
see.
this decorum that their church has, having doing something that's nothing like the way that they would do something
Right.
lining up for their crackers.
Okay, give me another example. Good, good.
So the colour to everyone, the dad.
That's
Oh!
it. Throwing candies in shul. So that's what I was looking for. Throwing candies in shul, every one's wrap. It's not considered to be a sign of disrespect. The kids get to pick up the candies in shul. But in other contexts, when you're not in those contexts, you shouldn't be throwing food. You shouldn't be disrespectful of food. And discuss some of the details now. But first, a question from Hirsch and from
So
Noah.
I learned that there is this tradition based on Yaakov Avinu fighting the Malach, and that he hurt a certain ligament, and because of that, I'm not allowed to eat the ligament of that. Which one?
The sciatic nerve.
So what, throwing that away is not a sword? No, since we're not allowed to eat.
That's correct. That's correct. That's not food.
So mine's kind of similar. We learn about nowadays, the mitzvah is we take that little bit and burn it.
Right, with respect,
So
yeah. We
that's
don't
like-
throw it in the garbage. We either wrap it up and put it in the garbage
Still
separately,
dispose
or we
it.
burn it. That's right, that's the mitzvah, we have to do that. But, not in any disrespectful way. Now, what you will see, in particular, there's an emphasis in the Jewish tradition on bread. Bread is the staff of life. It's the man's primary staple. Also, it was used in the temple service, right? There was the showbread. And so it gets more respect than others. And that's why if you have leftover bread after the meal, you've got to be careful it doesn't get wet. You never want to make bread wet, it gets ruined. So you got to take off the bread before you clear up or wash off the table, because if you wash off the table with water, it'll make the bread soggy and disgusting. Shouldn't make bread disgusting. Also, you'll see some people, they put their bread out, not in the garbage,
Okay.
so that the birds can come and eat it. Now, the problem is we eat a lot of bread and there's not enough birds. The birds that are not going to come enough and eat it all up. So what's left over, it gets hard, it gets disgusting. Maybe the dogs ate at it, it falls onto the floor, it crumbles up, and therefore I think that's a bad practice. Many people do that because they're trying to be holy, trying to be very careful and respectful of the bread, and they put the bread, you'll see bread sometimes on top of one of these green garbage bins. They're called Sfardia, they're called frogs in Hebrew. The big garbage bins. So I think that's inappropriate. What you should do is put the bread, leftover bread, if you're not going to eat it, you throw it away. You put it in a plastic bag. In a plastic bag, you put it in the garbage.
I thought leaving the bread out.
Because that's like taking the bread and putting it on top of the disgusting stuff that's in the garbage. If you have in the garbage, for example, a dirty diaper, and then you put the bread on top of the dirty diaper, that's not respectful to the bread. True. So we treat.
Is that just for bread?
You could burn it, but that's not really. We don't have furnaces in our homes. It's not so easy to burn it. You could burn it.
I thought in the case of leftover bread, some people leave out like whole loaves and bags and such because they want somebody who doesn't have bread to be able to come get it.
Yeah, if that's applicable in your society, if there are poor people walking around looking for bread, then that would be appropriate. But in most circles that I know of, the poor people are not going to walk around and look for bread. Maybe if you leave over a closed package of cookies or a cereal, and there are poor people who don't have enough to eat, they'll take a can of preservative, of pickles. If you leave it out, somebody will say, okay, that's good. I can see that it's clean. Nobody touched it. Nobody opened it. So they'll take it. That's what you can give out your food that way. But something that's open, something that's half used, most people are not going to take it. It's just going to go to waste. And it's really, I feel that's not giving it more respect, it's giving it less respect. So you have to apply the principle to your society. And in this society, most people are not looking around for half a loaf of bread. Bread is very cheap also. But if you do have, if you know that there are poor people that are coming to eat your bread, by all means,
As somebody
give
who's
it to
been
them.
both very wealthy and very poor at different points of my life. I mean, I had to beg for change in Grand Central Station. I've also had a supercar.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it when I walk around and I see like, especially like whole loaves of bread people put out on the curb. It's like, wow, I would have loved that when I was homeless.
Right, so
If
if they're
walk down the
homeless,
street and there'll be just like a half bag of pita sitting there for somebody to
yes,
take.
if it's practical, then by all means, it's a nice way of giving tzedakah, and nobody feels to feel that they have to beg for it. But in most cases, what I see is it comes to waste. And most poor people, even if they don't have a lot, they don't want to get the stale bread. They'll spend the 6 shekels, right? The price of bread in Israel is very cheap. It's government, there's a ceiling on the price of bread. Simple breads, of course, the more expensive breads, you can do anything you want, but the simple basic breads, sliced bread, it costs, a few shekels, and it lasts you, it comes in a plastic bag, it lasts you a few days. Nobody's really scrounging around for bread in most circles, because there's also bituach leumi, there's national security, social security, which it's rare to find somebody who doesn't have what to eat, literally. It can happen, by all means. If you see someone who's hungry, feed him. It's a big mitzvah. But usually leaving bread out to the elements causes greater disgrace of the food than actually feeding the poor. Yes? No.
How on earth do Jewish restaurants work? I mean, the amount of
Good question.
comes from
There's
bread.
so much waste. So when you're even making a meal, you should try to make the right portions, sizes, for what you need and not make extra. Some places you have to make extra because it looks really fancy to have lots of things.
So let's say for a bar mitzvah or wedding.
That's right. So the ideal thing is that all those leftovers should be sent to poor people. There are organizations, we talked about it here, an organization called Menachem, which is taking the original biblical idea of the leftovers and applying it, and they basically have refrigerated trucks which go around to the different halls and collect the leftover food. Leket, yes, it's a great organization. But you're right, we should try to minimize the leftovers and obviously, if possible, package it up. If the cost of taking care of the leftovers is going to be too much, more than the actual price of the food, then you don't have to shoot yourself in the foot. In other words, like the leftover food worth 20 shekels, but taking your worker and paying him for half an hour to package it up and to give it out is going to cost more than 20 shekels, so that you don't have to do that halachically. It's not an obligation. But it's not an ideal situation. There's lots of leftovers. It's really something that needs a lot of fixing. It's not.
If you have animals or you know someone you have animals, you can give the food you still need to take care. You need to make much food, or you can say, I don't need to care about much food, I can give it to some animals at home.
I guess you could be a little more lenient because if the animal's going to eat the leftovers, they won't go to waste.
Yes.
Yeah, but not everything not everybody has animals, not every, animals eat all the food. And, but you're right, of course, if it's not going to waste, it's fine.
Maybe you can ask if you can do a whole chicken on the roof.
You can ask Machon Meir, sure. You can ask Rav Listman, can we grow chickens on the roof so that we can dispose of our leftovers?
It's also
Good luck with that.
You really want to try Teddy from the edge, huh?
Good luck with that. Okay, the principles are clear. Any other questions on waste? Don't destroy for no good reason. Try to preserve God's world, and it all stems from that mitzvah of not tearing down, not uprooting a fruit tree. And with that, we finish our sessions about the produce, and we're going to move on to the laws of kashrut, not before about the laws of Hannukah. Tomorrow, same time, same place, different topic. We're going to get started with the laws of Hannukah.
great.